Well, first of all, what kind of mythical powers does a Sun Devil have? We got to consider that.
No! Terrell! Run the road again!
Hey guys! Hey! I'm having a press conference, okay?
Their fat little girlfriends have some obvious advantages. For one thing, their fat little girlfriends are telling them what they want to hear.
It's Division I football! It ain't intramurals!
All right, and welcome back to the Week 11 reaction show for the Hoppy Huddle podcast. I'm Jake, that's Ed, and boy, it was another one of those weekends, man. How about that? It was crazy. It just, every time you think like, oh, that was the one weekend of the season where everything crazy happened, and then you get another weekend like this where, we were going to the week, I even joked like, haha, this is one of those weeks where there's not a lot of good games in the slate, and you were like, you can't say that. And I was like, that's why I said it, because as soon as I said that, it was destined to become an all-timer classic of a weekend. We had multiple top 10 upsets, top 10 scares. We had craziness all across the board. A lot of conference and playoff title races are just in complete disarray. Like, good luck forecasting anything. Who knows what the heck is going to happen? So it's a great day to be a college football fan.
This is the greatest sport on earth. I don't know why anybody else follows any other sport. This is the best sport. And yesterday proved it once again. If you like this sport, then maybe you just ought to go to basket weaving or something. I don't know what you should do, because I tried to watch some NFL today, man. It just doesn't have the same juice. College football has juice every single weekend. So
yeah, I agree.
Where do we even start with yesterday? I don't even know. Take a pick.
I think let's start off in the ACC with the number 4 ranked Miami Hurricanes. And you know what they did, Dad? They pulled a Miami. This is how it is. Honestly, Miami had been playing with fire all season. They kept coming back into it with Cam Ward magic. They have the number 1 offense in the country. They have great wide receivers, great O-line, great running back, great quarterback. And all that's well and good, except for the fact that their defense can't stop anybody, apparently. They're also really injured on the defensive side. Like, I don't know if you know, even throughout the game, multiple players went out through injury and did come back. Their secondary was already weak, and they lost, I think, their second best corner. Like, their defense can't stop anybody. But their offense, up until this point, couldn't have been stopped. But Georgia Tech basically played the old keep away game and just held onto the ball for long 8, 9, 10-minute drives and just kept Miami off the field. Cam Ward, like, statistically played pretty well, but if you watch the game, like, he looked rattled. He did not have that unflappable coolness that we've seen him with the entire season. He was kind of like scrambling. He looked a lot more running for his life rather than just casually dodging rushers. And yeah, I mean, if you play with fire enough times, you're going to get burned, and it eventually caught up with Miami.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing, and you're right. Miami has had these sort of situations where they've had to come back 3 times already this year in the fourth quarter. They just couldn't do it yesterday. They ran into a team where they couldn't stop the run, and Georgia Tech was just running the ball. And here's what we have to remember about the college football teams. Most of these teams are not perfect in any stretch form, especially not this year. There are just times go back on the history of college football where even the better team just happens to play another team. A lot of times it's on the road. They just have one of those games where they lose. It's just all the things break the right way. And if you watch this game, everything broke the right way for the the higher ranked team to lose today. I mean, Georgia Tech controlled the ball. Georgia Tech ran the ball well. Miami didn't get as many breaks as they usually do. And let's don't bring the refs into it. I'm just talking about a typical upset. This has had all of your normal criteria for an upset. This does not mean that Miami is a bad team. They just got beat yesterday. It happens. And you know what? I think it's probably not a bad thing for them. It will probably settle them down. And go back to your first statement. They have the top offense in the country. Give me a better offense. Now, I may say Ole Miss may be up there and maybe Oregon. But beyond those two, you cannot. There are not any other teams that are that consistent offensively, both running and throwing the ball. So I think a lot of the. I mean, my goodness, listening to all of the college football people the last 24 hours, they're like, "Oh my goodness, this Miami team's been so overrated and everything." No, they just lost a game, and that happens. You know what? It's okay. Now, if you start to lose another one or three, then we've got a different story. But maybe this is just a loss, and maybe that's going to be okay.
Yeah, and honestly, if you look around college football, losing a game is something that happens to everyone this year because, like I said, like the third week of the season, there are no elite teams. And there aren't any elite teams. Basically, everyone except for Oregon, Indiana, and, the Joseph Smith-blessed BYU Cougars cannot go this season undefeated, has not been able to.
Yep. But here's the bigger issue, Jake, and here's my problem with this loss. Miami loses. Okay, no big deal.
That
Everybody's
happens.
lost. But for some reason, when Miami loses, the sky is falling. When Alabama, Georgia, LSU, or Tennessee lose, oh, it's okay. They're an SEC team. We'll give them a loss. Because they don't have that SEC patch on their team, it's like everybody else in the country doesn't get a mulligan. If you're an SEC team, you get one mulligan. Sometimes you get two mulligans before they start to penalize you. But look how far Miami dropped in the rankings. They dropped 8 spots. Okay, Georgia, who lost their second game yesterday, and by the way, Georgia didn't lose. They got trampled, and we'll get to them yesterday. They looked bad. They dropped 9 spots, have 2 losses on the year, and they're still ranked ahead above Miami. So, it is, again, that patch on the jersey, if it's SEC, you get 2 or 3 mulligans. If you're not, then you don't get a mulligan. And that's what really irritates me about this. It's not that Miami lost, is that the rest of the world is held to a different standard other than the SEC. And the SEC this year, they're all just
Big
great.
Ten too.
Big Ten too. Well, but not every Big Ten team. I mean, I think if Penn State they had a loss, but they didn't drop that far. You're probably right. They get a little bit better, but not but the SEC.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah,
but so you're kind of preaching to the choir here a little bit. I kind of agree, but
if Penn State got a second loss, they wouldn't be anywhere near sniffing the top 10 like Georgia, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Alabama.
I think they would.
Penn State second loss.
Penn State
no
is
way.
perennially ranked, 9 through 11 with 2 losses at the end of the season. Every year, that's Penn State.
Well, it's usually to Ohio State and Michigan. I'm just telling you, this Miami team, actually one of the better teams this season, they lose to a Georgia Tech team, which, by the way, everyone's going to say, well, Georgia Tech's not that good. They're only 6-4.
Georgia Tech is a good team.
We take out Georgia Tech 6-2 when Haynes King is playing. 2 of their losses when Haynes King was playing. So can we understand this is a different team when he's playing? And nobody in the media wants to talk about that. Meanwhile, LSU or South Carolina is getting dinged for their loss to LSU, or LSU was getting credit for beating South Carolina when Sellers was out for 80-90% of the game. I mean, let's compare apples to apples. Honestly, people, let's just do that for once. Anyway, you got me fired up at 8 o'clock on a Sunday night.
I can't argue with you there. That's just it's the way it is. Yes. Honestly, what this means for Miami's playoff hopes, that's the AP poll. I still think it would not surprise me if the college football playoff had them a little bit higher, around the 10-11 range, because the CFP is usually a little more reasonable than the AP poll and some of this stuff.
We'll see. But you know what? You know what helped Miami last night was Virginia beating Pitt.
Yeah. Well,
that was huge.
Several things is that I still think that, Miami still gets into playoff if they win the ACC, so that's their automatic. And if they lose in the ACC title game, I still think there's a chance that they sneak in at the end of the bottom of the playoff.
There's a lot that has to go there.
Miami is a big brand, unlike, like they are as big a brand as a lot of those SEC schools. And so, at least in TV numbers wise, I know that people don't turn out to their games because they're, 9 hours from the nearest city besides Miami. But that's why. Everybody can drive to Atlanta. Nobody can drive to Miami. But my point is that if you're Miami, this is not like a despair thing. If you're looking at SMU or like, dude, what if we lose? What if we lose to SMU in the title game? You'll probably still get in. SMU, Nah, probably not. If they lose in the title game, they're probably not getting it. But
No.
Miami is a big enough brand to maybe command some of that, especially if you want some sort of Notre Dame-Miami matchup that the TV people would love to go for, because it's all rigged anyway.
Yeah. Can you imagine having Miami at 11 and Notre Dame at what would that be, 6?
Yeah, that's a scenario that could happen if BYU and Tennessee lose. That Notre Dame's at 6.
Yeah. I mean, let's put it this way: Miami needs to. You don't want to have to lose the ACC and then hang your hat on that, because there are going to be some SEC teams lurking.
This is also a super chaotic year, so I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah. No, but Miami. Listen, again, that Virginia win at Pitt. Real briefly. I mean, Holstein went out for Pitt. That changed the game. Virginia went on the road, was able to pull out the victory. Nice job, the Wahoos. But that changed the dynamics, because until Pitt losing, Pitt all of a sudden, the tie-breaking scenario didn't break Miami's way. Now the tiebreakers all work Miami's way.
They're fine.
They're fine as long as they go and beat, or do they still play Duke and Syracuse, I believe it is?
They could also lose one of those games. Like
they could, but Georgia Tech presented a unique challenge with with a heavy running tack like that, almost a triple option kind of.
It was kind of a zone read option, basically.
Yeah, I don't think Duke or Syracuse is going to present the same. Alhonda McCord, I don't think is going to create the problems that Georgia Tech did.
Yeah.
And anyway, Miami, again, they didn't play great. End of the day, or drop some, but they still can control their own destiny. And once they get there, they'll probably still be a 3 seed, would be my guess at the worst.
Yeah, probably.
They'd still be a higher seed than the Big 12 seed at this point if they make it. So,
yeah. I think it's time to go talk about Oxford, Mississippi.
Wow,
where
do you want to go with that one?
I would just like to thank all of you guys for paying attention to this show, because if you have been, you would know that I've been saying Georgia's a bunch of frauds for about 3 weeks now, and I was right. Okay, Carson Beck is not a good quarterback. Georgia is not a good football team. When they flip it on defense, they're very good, but I genuinely think that there's problems at Georgia. Like, they just don't. They tried for like 3 quarters in the Texas game, and they were elite, and they basically haven't tried for like the entire rest of the season.
Second half Alabama, they turned it on.
Second half Alabama.
Other than that,
Carson Beck's not good.
Disappointing.
Their offense is not good. Okay, what do you need on offense? You need good quarterbacks. You need good receivers. You need a good run game.
Right.
You need good offensive line. They didn't have any of them.
Jake, we have been. If anybody's listened to us, I know our diehard listeners. They've been hearing us all season long talk about Carson Beck does not have McConkey or Bowers anymore. He can't throw the ball deep. Yeah, I mean, look in the last few games. He's throwing the ball sideways. He's throwing it screen passes.
Beck's not good.
Don't trust him. Don't tell me it's Bobo. It's Beck. Beck is the issue.
It's not just Beck either.
No.
Their offensive line was absolutely obliterated by Ole Miss's defensive front.
1.8 yards per carry yesterday. They couldn't run the ball.
They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't pass block either. Carson Beck was under pressure the entire night. He did not get like a free second the entire game. By the way, congrats to the Grove Collective, because that Walter Nolan purchase seems to have paid off for them in this game.
Yeah.
He really tore them up.
I mean, Tate Rutledge is not. I mean, he's still is not 100%. They can't run the ball.
The only good player in that Georgia offense is that freshman that they brought in for a couple of plays. I'm trying to remember his name.
I know you're talking about. I don't remember his name either.
There's a really fast freshman receiver that they brought in, and they didn't play him every snap. He was kind of a certain packages kind of guy, and every time he was on the field and he got the ball, they went off. But I don't remember his name.
Yeah,
this is
a real problem. And I was listening to the Cover 3, which is, I know, one of your and mine's favorite podcast.
Yeah.
Give Bud Elliott all credit for this. Bud raised the point, and I thought, it'd be interesting for us to discuss it. Was last year's Georgia team similar? It's just that they played a lot weaker schedule, and they just hit it better.
They had better receivers.
They had better receivers. I think that's probably it. But remember last year's team, and you and I talked about this last year. I remember having this conversation. Last year's team wasn't that great either. They just they just had the easiest schedule in the world last year, and that's how they got to the SEC championship. They didn't play anybody last year. This year they're having to play people, and they're.
Yep, completely agree.
You can do away with these divisions, and all of a sudden we're seeing the flaws. Something's not right. Now, this team is talented, but could they go up and beat anybody in the country? Absolutely, if Beck plays his best game. But they're not winning 4 in a row. I don't believe they can win, or 3 in a row. I'm sorry. They're not winning 3 in a row winning this championship. I don't believe so anymore. I've seen enough.
Yeah, that defense, like, first of all, hats off to Lane Kiffin. I know he's technically not calling the plays anymore, but like
Charlie Weiss Jr.
But that was a Lane Kiffin scheme masterpiece. Like there were so many plays where it was just obvious that Ole Miss like had the coaching advantage over Georgia's defense. Like there were wide open players streaking down the field. There was a lot of just good play design, like really creative. They ran a whole bunch of different stuff. They ran Jackson Dart a lot more, like that, more than I expected them to.
When was the last
he went
time?
out. Yeah, by the way, he went out he had like an ankle injury in the first drive, right? And then he came back, and then he came back, and then he was still running. So I don't know whether he tweaked it. They gave him a bunch of meds, which is my guess, but I don't know. That was Jackson Dart played amazing. He played fantastic, put the team on his back. Ole Miss was also able to kind of get some run game going with some like kind of outside zone stuff. They weren't really running the ball up the middle super well, but being a little creative, they were able to run the ball and kind of balance out the pass.
Yeah.
And
Ole Miss, like I mentioned earlier, I think they're one of the offenses when they're fully functioning is one of the more impressive ones in the country. You have to remember that loss.
Absolutely.
They were missing Trey Harris earlier in the season, I think, for the Kentucky loss and the LSU loss. But so that's a big difference maker for that team.
Yeah.
So when they have all their parts, tough to stop. They're 8-2. They are not. I mean, I don't know if they can make the SEC conference championship game, but who knows who can at this point. But clearly are one of the teams in the SEC I would not want to be playing if I was in the playoff right now. They're finally getting everything together. They're going to be, if they make the playoff, I mean, to me, it's going to be hard to keep them out. They're going to be really dangerous, and I think they've got enough talent on both. They look like a complete team, offensively and defensively. And that was a big win for Lane Kiffin. The knock on him up until yesterday, and it's why I picked Georgia to win, was that Lane never won these big games, and Georgia always did. Well, we finally saw the flip of Lane won, Georgia didn't. When's the last time you saw a Kirby Smart team lose that badly to someone other than Alabama? Long time.
Yeah. I don't know.
They were beat bad yesterday. That wasn't just a field goal in overtime.
That's what I'm saying. It's like they also like in the towards the end of that game, they also just looked like they stopped trying.
Yeah, like, maybe so, maybe. But they were beaten.
But that's another indictment on Kirby Smart's Georgia.
Yeah, this isn't your father's Georgia team from a couple of years ago.
Oh, by the way, what did I say coming into this game? You're like, I said, Josh Pate's quote: "Just because they haven't doesn't mean they can't."
Yeah, you're right.
And they could. Like Ole Miss came in. I thought they were the better offense. I basically my guess was that Georgia couldn't score with Ole Miss, and that was completely correct. But I didn't expect Ole Miss to run away with it this badly.
Yeah.
Like
now you've got Ole Miss in a situation where I think they've got their schedule's pretty easy the rest of the way. I mean, they've got Mississippi State Egg Bowl, and I know you're going to talk about rivalry game. They're not losing to Mississippi State. Mississippi State hasn't won a conference game all year.
Not this team.
Not a good team. They're not capable of playing with anybody. And I forget the other game Ole Miss has to play. Georgia has to play Tennessee this week. And let me tell you what, Georgia loses that game, they're done. They're done. And Tennessee loses that game, facing another so-called elimination game, perhaps.
Yeah. Yep. You're absolutely correct.
I don't know if either one of those teams can take, because Tennessee have 2 losses. Yeah, no, Tennessee has 1 loss. Tennessee may be able to lose that game.
If Tennessee loses that game, oh boy.
Oh, yeah. But if Georgia loses, I think they're probably done because there's going to be too many 2-loss teams ahead of them in the SEC that are going to, and you're not going to get 6 SEC teams in. You're going to have. So I think that's a critical game for Georgia because coming weekend. That is your primetime I'm sure that's the Kirk Herbstreit matchup on primetime on Saturday night.
Yeah. Yep. Where else? What else do you want to go to?
Do you want to go to the
I think we got to
bludgeoning in the Bayou?
Yeah, I think we have to talk about it because Brian Kelly getting blown out by Alabama. This seems familiar. Where have I seen this before?
Wow.
Oh, yeah, the BCS title game versus Nick Saban.
Yep. So we'll start with LSU first. Start with the losers first because we like to pick on the losers in this show, not the winners.
Yeah, so LSU, what happened, man? I don't know. Like,
It's easy, Jake. It's the same thing with Texas A&M game. They can't stop a running quarterback. And we should have known this. You know, we were talking about LSU in the night game and how they don't lose at Death Valley at night under Brian Kelly. Whatever. They can't stop a running quarterback. And Jalen Milroe ran them in that game. Ridiculous.
Yeah, I didn't know who was going to win going into this game. I sort of leaned Alabama just because DeBoer, I thought was a better coach. And boy, was that true because DeBoer had some stuff cooked up for that defense that, while not even very good, like throughout the year, like they had no answers for what they ran. They ran some really creative design or QB runs. Yeah.
This gets back to my concerns for LSU. At the beginning of the season, nothing has changed, and we're in November. Nussmeier is not Jaden Daniels. He has regressed over the season. He continues to. He's not accurate. He's throwing interceptions. They baited him into that. I don't think he's that good. Go look at the stats.
I don't think Nussmeier is the problem. I think that defense and the offensive line is the problem. They can't run the ball and they can't play defense. He was 27 for 42 for 239 yards, 1 TD, 2 interceptions. Not great.
He's thrown 11 picks. He's thrown 11 picks. I mean,
yes, that's true. He does have an interception problem.
Too much.
But, you know, that interception problem, I partly lay on the run game in the fact that defenses just drop back into a million coverage. LSU is forced to throw the ball, and defenses know they aren't running the ball, so you have to force the ball into tight windows, and more interceptions are more likely. Like, if you watch Nussmeier play, he doesn't look like that. Like,
I don't have the game splits.
Doesn't look like that bad of a quarterback.
Pull out the game. If I can pull out the splits on when they played,
he did not have a good night.
Puffs earlier in the year. Pull out those splits, and he's barely above 58% completion in the SEC games. I mean, I'd have to pull those up. I don't have those in front of me right now.
I think no one respects LSU's run game, and so they have to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game, and that
I get that, but my point is that he is not. She was based on the whole season. He's not if he was a 70% completion passer, they'd have at least another victory or two. He's not where they need to be for that offense.
Maybe, but
he's not.
I don't think he's the biggest problem on their team. I think
maybe
LSU's biggest problem is they cannot run the ball at all. Like zero. Like zero at all. They can't run the ball.
They also have no secondary.
No secondary. And yeah, their defense, so it's really easy to throw on them, and you can't run the ball. So that means you give up explosives and chunk plays to the other team, and you can't control the clock with the running game. That's like the worst combo you could possibly have.
Yeah.
Like of offense, like so. Yes, Nussmeier has been not fantastic, but I don't think he's the worst part of this LSU team. And I think some of this goes back to LSU didn't bring anybody in the transfer portal in the offseason. We were like, are their new guys really that much better? Or like, what are we? So on defense, we were like, their defense wasn't great last year. We're like, but they didn't bring anybody in. So we're thinking like, do they really have that much improvement? Like, I don't understand. That decision may come back to haunt Brian Kelly to not bring people in through the transfer portal. And I don't know why. Like, I do not understand.
Well, they've got a bigger issue than that. And this is going to be the problem with LSU is that Bryce Underwood, their star number one recruit quarterback.
Oh, he's amazing. Have you watched any of his high school film?
Seen clips. And, the people say that this is the best recruit since Cam Newton. Like, he has got all the physical tools. This guy. Well, guess who's sniffing around at him a lot now? Michigan.
Yeah, he's from Michigan, right?
If I don't know where he's from, maybe. But if they lose him to Michigan, then I think Brian Kelly's going to be in the hot seat sooner than you think.
Yeah, I mean, he's really good, but their class is still
Yeah, but that class falls
Top
apart.
five.
If Underwood leaves, that class starts to fall apart. You know that.
Probably. He
Let's
is
play-
that good.
Let's play ranking game. So LSU is 6-3, Missouri 7-2, and South Carolina 6-3. They're all kind of lumped together in the AP poll at 21, 23, and 24. Now I'm gonna call BS on this because out of those three teams, there's only one team in there that's a legitimate football team, and that's South Carolina. LSU and Missouri are the biggest frauds now after I'm watching them. South Carolina. Now, I know LSU beat South Carolina, but let's not forget that was where Sellers got injured, was out most of that game.
Yeah.
I mean, you give me South Carolina and LSU on neutral field today, and I think South Carolina beats them by 10. South Carolina is a good football team, right?
Also, that was kind of before the formula to beat LSU was completely revealed.
Yeah.
Where you just drop everybody in coverage. So
Yeah.
that they still tried to stop some of that run. So I don't know, but
And some of these freshmen,
yeah, South Carolina's a better team.
South Carolina, and so I mean, I think LSU and Missouri have revealed themselves to probably be bigger frauds than their records suggest. And South Carolina at 3 losses to me seems like, oh my goodness, if they just had one less loss, they'd be the team we'd be talking about along with Ole Miss as being a dangerous team going into the playoff. But I think they're going to be the outside looking in. Nobody wants to play South Carolina.
I don't think any 3-loss teams getting in the playoff.
Well, don't say that just yet. There's still a lot of football to be played.
It would take a lot, but I really doubt it.
Can we talk about the winner, Alabama, for a second?
Yes. Everybody was ready to sell Kalen DeBoer and be like, pitchforks and torches. How dare you, Kalen DeBoer? You've ruined the legacy of this great program. No, Kalen DeBoer isn't a great coach, but you just can't expect him to be Nick Saban was the issue. And he really showed why he's such a good coach in this game because he just absolutely whipped Brian Kelly from the coaching department.
He did, yeah.
Like their game plan was better on offense and on defense. Their execution was better. They just seemed more prepared. They had adjusted from the Tennessee game where they had a lot of snap issues with the noise. They had that new system that they did where the guy taps his leg and then lifts the knee and all that. And they implemented the hard count several times that was pretty effective. They were prepared for this game. They came in and they went out and they took it to them. And kudos to Kalen DeBoer in Alabama. And yeah, I think anybody who was calling for DeBoer's head at this point was pretty short-sighted. And we kind of said that, like, everybody chill out a little bit. Like, he beat Georgia and then lose. Like, he gets up for these big games. This was a big game. And Milrose legs. He's fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the week off helped him. I still think this Alabama team has got some flaws that aren't going to lead them to, aren't going to take them very far because, I mean, I think if you were to slow down Milroe at the line of scrimmage and make him throw the ball, and I could see other teams like Ole Miss doing that, I think that would be a bad matchup. I think Ole Miss could take advantage of that Bama team. I think Texas, Ohio State, Oregon, probably Penn State, they would all be able, and I think Tennessee showed what you can do if you do that. So I think this Bama team has limitations, but LSU was just a good matchup for them. And so Bama's probably going to make the playoff because they don't have much. They're going to play a weakened Oklahoma team, which just can't beat anybody. And they've got Auburn and the Iron Bowl. Sorry, Nacho Man 57. I don't think there's any miracles happening in that bowl, that game, at the current state, not with Auburn's quarterback situation. So it looks like Bama is going to continue to move on up with the 2-loss Bama team. Whether or not they make the SEC championship, it seems like they're still headed on a path towards the playoffs.
Yeah, it's really interesting because the downside, of course, of conference expansion is you don't get to play everybody anymore. I would have loved to see Alabama Ole Miss this year. That would have been such a great matchup, and classic SEC West, right? Like that would have been a great matchup to watch. And
we still may get it. Who knows? Maybe we get in the conference champ, but it doesn't appear that way.
Oh, I don't think we can just mathematically because Texas or Texas A&M is pretty much in it unless craziness happens.
Well, the only three teams control their own destiny in the SEC. That's Texas, Texas A&M, and Tennessee. And so it's hard to envision all three of those completely falling apart. I mean, there is a scenario out there, but it's unlikely. So I think you're going to see at least one of those three in the SEC championship, which would eliminate the old Bama matchup.
I agree with you there, but
all right, so that's enough SEC.
It'll be interesting.
We got to move on to something else. So
let's talk about America's team, the grandest team in all the land, and that would be Indiana Hoosiers, baby. Oh, that was a close one. Yeah.
Boy, I'm glad
Not
I
so,
took Michigan in the points. So
Yeah. No, that the Indiana and the points did not cash. I will say, congrats on Indiana for figuring it out and not choking. They were kind of playing with their food in the second half, and Michigan started moving the ball a little bit, and the defense, they started getting pressure on Rourke, and I don't know. What did you think of this game?
well, I know, watching it, I didn't really feel like Michigan was ever going to win. I mean, I know they had some chance at the end, but I mean, it felt like Indiana was still in control, but they just kept Michigan. Michigan stayed in it long enough. Biggest concern is, I've been pulling for Sharon Moore. I'm hopeful that he's a good coach, but man, he's
awesome. He's great. He's
a great
guy.
person. I think he's a great guy. He seems to have recruiting. He's recruiting very well. But his in-game management, there were some decisions yesterday. First of all, and I think I texted you when this was going on, they got the ball
awful. They ran off like 45 seconds. Like, what was happening?
That's the end of the game.
The end of the game, yeah.
This was either late third or early fourth when they got the turnover at the 5, and it's first down, second down, third down runs, and I'm going, and then he kicks the field goal. I mean, so you're inside the 5-yard line. You're still down, I think, 2 touchdowns at this point. I'm going, why are you kicking the field? I mean, they ran it like they were down 3. And I didn't understand. I mean, come on, you've got – and then the running of the clock at the end of the game, that was terrible. I mean, I just don't know if sometimes he's thinking through. It's just too conservative, not thinking through. Some issues there. But I hope he gets this thing figured out because I think he's
and I mean, some coaches never get that figured out, and some coaches can change. I mean, look at Jimbo. He never got those decisions figured out.
Yeah.
But Mario seems to have changed his mind and now goes forward on fourth down and makes those plus positive value added decisions. So maybe Sharon Moore can kind of study some game tape in the offseason and be like, all right, someone be like, okay, here's a drive.
Yeah. Now, as far as Indiana goes, I think it was probably healthy to have a game where they just didn't beat everybody up the entire game. To have to fight a little bit at the end, that's probably not
good to have some adversity to kind of figure out how you respond to it. Plus, it'll give Coach Six something to scream about at practice for the next week.
That's right. That's right.
Because I don't know if you saw the post-game interview, but he seemed really, really angry that they only won by 5 points.
Yeah.
Over Michigan at Indiana. He was like genuinely like angry. And they were like, how does it feel to beat Michigan? He's like, what are we, 10-0?
Yeah.
So he strikes me as kind of an old ball coach, like Saban type that like,
well, I won't. I'll share with you off air a story that I have. I don't want to repeat it in the public domain, but I'll share you a story that I have that'll give you some perspective. We'll keep that off public domain. So,
all right.
Anyway, good win for Indiana. Now they get an off week before they rest up to face Ohio State, and Ohio State looked good yesterday. They played a complete game. Will Howard looked good. But they better be ready for Indiana. Indiana's going to bring it in 2 weeks. And I know.
Yeah, I'm going to be real. I didn't watch a single second of that Ohio State game.
Well, it was over pretty quickly. I mean, it was.
That's what I figured.
And Ohio State, other than the Oregon game, their defense hasn't given up a lot this year. And so that's going to be a ball game. Big Noon's going to be there in 2 weeks. Decide who's going to place Oregon Big Ten championship because I don't think Oregon's almost getting closer to clinching that. So we kind of, I think the Big Ten's on, and we got a pretty clear picture of what's happening conference-wise. All the other 3 major conferences are a complete disaster. But the Big Ten, I think we have a good sense of how it's probably going to break down. And then in 2 weeks, we'll know pretty quickly of what we think the 2 teams are.
Yep. Where else do you want to go?
I
think we got to talk.
Go ahead.
I don't know if you stayed. I don't think you stayed up and watched it, but
the Holy War.
The Holy War, man.
I went back and watched it this morning a little bit.
I love rivalries, man. The college football rivalries are great. There is some real bad blood between BYU and Utah.
Evidently.
They despise each other. Like it's a classic like hatred college football rivalry. And I love that, by the way. Also, side note, BYU and Utah both wore their home jerseys, the red.
That was awesome.
Blue.
I did see that.
And that's fantastic. And more teams should do this in rivalry games, all right?
The white jerseys. I like the contrast.
Oh, the white's terrible. Okay, more teams, every team in their rivalry, their number one rivalry game, should wear their home jerseys. That's a great idea. USC and UCLA does it as well. Love to see it. Every team should do that in rivalry. It's a great idea. But on the game, exactly, BYU, they skated by out of this game. I did see the questionable call. I did think it was holding.
It was
They weren't
holding.
just bailed out by the refs. It was not. So, context to this, the Utah athletic director after the game comes up to the microphone and says, the game was robbed from us. It was completely stolen. This is ridiculous. We were excited to join the Big 12, but not anymore. First of all, that's complete nonsense because Utah hates being in the Big 12. They hate that they had to stoop so low and join the Big 12. They hate that BYU was there before them. They think that they're better than the Big 12 teams. They envision themselves as a Big 10 team, but the rest of the country is like, no, you're a Big 12 team. Oh, the idea that Utah was excited to join the Big 12 in the first place is crazy. Anybody who's been on Big 12 Twitter knows how this goes. Second of all, that was a holding. Like, I understand being mad if it's a questionable call that determined the game. That happens all the time, and I don't begrudge teams for that. It was very clearly a holding. The guy just went like this while you're trying to run the route, and he dragged, and like, you can't do that. Like, that's holding. So I don't know what they wanted to change there. That's exactly a correct penalty. Just 'cause it didn't go your way.
There's video of the AD being on the field at the end of the game too, while the play's going on. So, I mean, this guy
Really?
Oh yeah, I saw that as well.
I didn't see that.
Yeah. This guy, I don't know his name. I don't know who he is, but go back to your office, go back and, figure out the scheduling for the women's volleyball team or the men's tennis team. Go do something else productive because, what you're doing is not helpful. You're going to get fined and you weren't even right. At least
He got fined.
Did he already get fined?
$40,000 in a public reprimand from Brett Yormark.
Good.
Brett Yormark put out a public statement, like personally called him out and called him like ridiculous.
If you're going to do that, at least be right about the call you're complaining about. He wasn't even right. So
yeah, yep, I agree. BYU pulls out another one by the seat of their pants. I don't know what kind of Mormon magic they have going on, but they've sacrificed the 11 cows. I don't know what they do, but they have just sprinkled fairy dust all over this team, and they just keep winning. I don't understand how they survive again and can remain undefeated. And good for BYU.
We'll go on record right now. They could play Kansas this week and at Arizona State the following week. They're going to lose one of those games.
It certainly looks like it because Arizona State, by the way, is really good and is bowl eligible. And Kansas, by the way, blew out Iowa State, right?
And Kansas has all of a sudden figured out how to play football this year, which at least like the first 7 weeks they decided not to. And now they are. They're starting to look like a team.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on with that, but
I think BYU is going to lose one of these games, and then you're going to be in a situation where the Big 12 is getting one team in, and it's going to be, do you believe?
It's Colorado. Dude, Colorado, man, they won. They beat Texas Tech. Good for them.
It was a solid performance by them. Listen, they're the only team that controls their destiny, except I guess BYU does too. But
BYU does.
But Colorado certainly can. Colorado wins out there in the Big 12 game championship.
Yeah, I mean, look, there is a scenario also where, like, BYU can win both of those. Those are winnable games.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, they could, yeah.
And if BYU is undefeated in the title game, they lose to Colorado. Big 12 is a too big a league. So
it's possible. There is that. You're right.
They're not leaving out a one-loss BYU for a 3-loss SEC team.
Well, don't you say that. Don't you put that juju on me. Don't you put that on me. Because they will.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I don't think they will. I mean, they respect BYU's rankings high enough right now.
But I know there's a lot of teams in the Big 12, but man, wouldn't you love to see an undefeated BYU play? And wouldn't you want to see Dion in that Big 12 championship game? You imagine the ratings that game will do.
That'd be crazy. Well, there's also another scenario where, what if Iowa State's in the Big 12 title game? They only got 2 losses. So what if they win? And what if, there's a scenario where the group of 5 is not the 5th ranked power conference champion.
I don't believe that. Boise State hadn't played a tough enough schedule. I don't care what they'll do. They will not give. I don't care what.
You don't think so?
No.
If some random 2-loss team is it?
No, I think they'll give it to.
Okay.
I don't. I think.
All right. You're probably right. You're probably right.
They'll shuffle that around.
Okay. But
see where else? A couple other games of interesting note here over the weekend.
Clemson beat Virginia Tech.
Yeah, and that game was 24-14, but Tech scored that touchdown late. The only other touchdown they scored was half, and they blocked
It was
Clemson.
kick return, right?
No, it was a blocked field goal. Clemson had another field goal block.
Oh,
It's like the
yeah.
fourth one this year. Other than that, Clemson controlled most of the game. They just didn't get the offense going. Virginia Tech couldn't move the ball. I mean, that's Virginia Tech now has 5 losses. This was the team that was supposed to have, playoff contender, 2 losses, 3 losses. They got 5 losses already. They're not
Got
even
a lot of
well.
returning starters, but are the starters any good?
Exactly. Thank you.
That's the age-old question.
We have not met since last Wednesday night when I just shared you a little nugget that I said there's pointers going to saying that Billy Napier will return. Thursday it was announced that the University of Florida said Billy Napier will be back as head coach of the Florida Gators for the 25 season.
That's not what they said.
They
If you
said
read
he'll
the statement.
No, what did the
They said Billy Napier will continue as the head coach of the University of Florida. Period.
Okay.
They did not mention 20 all. So
you're okay.
read into that what you will.
Okay. I mean, short of
They're keeping him unless another option appears. That was a very PR check statement that they put out. There was no 2025 commitment in there if you go back and read the statement, because they're covering their bases in case Lane or Signetti or
they're not hired.
One of these other coaches comes knocking.
Well, they great job by Florida for Napier to get there,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden turn around and get splattered by Texas on Saturday.
Well,
but
yeah,
they're missing their top 2
kinda
quarterbacks. They're missing their top running back, their top wide receivers, their top defensive back. I mean, they're playing like with the JV squad. So tough loss for the game.
I got some. We gotta talk about it. And I know you're not gonna like it. We gotta talk about that Notre Dame's playing really well.
Yeah, and I took
They beat Florida State 50-3, 52-3.
Everybody beats Notre Dame.
Not everybody beats them by 50 points. Notre Dame has blown out their last 3 opponents handily, and at this point they're fixing to pretty much be in the playoff unless they lose to Army, which is really the only team left on their schedule that I think.
Hey, what about the game this week against that surging Virginia Cavaliers?
Come on now. I know they beat Pitt, and that's good on them, but Notre Dame is a different animal.
Yeah. I still think Notre Dame's a paper tiger to some extent. I don't know, dude. They might be I don't know. What's better than paper? Cardboard? I don't know. By the way, was it animal abuse to make that Tiger and LSU watch that Bama game? I think that may be animal abuse.
That's funny. I think it's funny that they brought in a fake Micah the Tiger. Why couldn't they bring out the real one?
I know. No, you're right. I mean, their best victory. Notre Dame's won the first of the season against Texas A&M, which it's a different Texas A&M team now.
It is a good win though in hindsight.
But they beat a Louisville team, which we think Louisville's a pretty good team. They beat Georgia Tech, but Georgia Tech, that was not a Haynes King Georgia Tech team. So
still, I mean,
Navy is not proven to be that different. Navy's got 2 losses now.
They have more impressive wins than a lot of other 1-loss teams up there.
Maybe.
And they've blown out some teams recently. Notre Dame's going to be in the playoff, and I think for the first time in a while they might actually deserve it.
They're going to be in the playoff, have a home game. They're going to get splattered and lose to a real team, and we'll be done. It's Notre Dame. It's the Notre Dame bias, but whatever.
I think they might actually deserve it this year, though.
Okay.
Just by the way they've played.
All right. Shout out to my friend Brian, who always tells me about Notre Dame, and he tells me I give Notre Dame a hard time, but
you do, but most of the time you're correct.
I know.
But they're a good team this year.
Okay. All right.
Oregon and Penn State splattered. Tennessee splattered.
Big win.
So is Mike Gundy? Sorry, I was gonna say, is Mike Gundy gonna get fired?
No.
Have you been following this drama down at Oklahoma State?
I have. I don't think he's in danger. I'd be surprised.
They quit. I don't know if I had them on my fourth screen. Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
And they literally laid down against TCU, and that TCU team is pretty mediocre. So I'm really, Ollie Gordon just looks like he wants to get to the draft.
I don't know, Jake. I mean, I hate using that word quick. It's hard to tell when these people are quitting or when.
It just looked like it on the screen. Like I don't know. They weren't blocking hard. They missed assignments. Like I don't know. Just an observation. Mike Gundy, TCU fired Gary Patterson. We thought that would never
it's
happen.
possible, but Gundy just has done a good job there for so long. I'd be surprised if one really bad season doesn't mean.
But that's his thing, is he never has bad.
Well, but aren't you entitled to once? And I don't know if the NIL era is just they haven't quite made the adjustments to it with talent wise there.
Maybe.
And Alan Bowman, certainly. I don't know. I mean,
it's just something to watch.
It is. The other thing I think we need to watch, Tennessee won. We're not talking much about that game. I think we need to watch the injuries. Both Nico and Samson went out of that game. I didn't hear any reports today, and I didn't really look that hard, but I didn't hear that any of them are super serious. But both of them went out of the game, and I don't think either one played the second half.
Heupel said it was precautionary for Nico.
Yeah, but he didn't play the second half.
I don't know. Like,
I mean, that's not a good sign. And then, so I think the Bears are watching this week. We're going to get to the injury reports.
Oh, yeah. Congrats to Arizona State for beating UCF.
Yeah.
They're 7-2 now, Arizona State.
Gus Malzahn may be on the hot seat. That's the name to watch, I think.
Interesting, yeah.
I think Gus may be in trouble there.
I tend to agree. Boise State skated by Nevada after playing with their food. That was 2-score game for most of it. Ashton Genty had a pretty good game and a pretty mediocre performance by Boise State.
Yeah.
He had, what did he have? A couple, almost like 200 rushing yards.
Yeah.
3 touchdowns.
But
with Cam Ward's performance, he may not be out of the Heisman race yet.
No, I don't think so. I think this race is still wide open at this point.
Yeah, I think it's opened back up, especially because Cam Ward lost. Like I said, I'm tracking my Genty Heisman ticket week by week, and it has dropped. The cash out value has dropped the last 2 weeks, and it went back up this week. So the odds, his odds have definitely improved. The way that Genty or Hunter wins is if there's no clear other candidate and one of them goes off in the conference title game.
I think you're probably right.
And right now it's sort of looking like there's no clear other candidate.
I think Milroe can get back into this. I think Ward could still.
I don't think he can. He has 2 losses. I don't think he can.
I don't think it matters. I think if anybody gets that conference championship weekend, has a big game, could jump.
I guess if you're right. You're right. If he goes off a conference title game weekend, but
and I think
Alabama may not be in that.
I understand, but I'm just saying the last 2 weekends are going to make a big difference for somebody. Somebody has a big 2 weekends. The last weekend of the conference championship weekend, that could be enough to propel him at this point.
I just don't think Gabriel has the wow moments to win the Heisman. He has the stats.
It takes
I just don't,
1 week or 2 weeks.
I just haven't seen. He's the opposite of Cam Ward.
Yeah, but sometimes in a year, going back in history, sometimes in these years where you don't have somebody that's super, super great, all it takes is an average good year, and then all of a sudden maybe just a good last game or two, and it puts them over the top. It could happen.
And that's what I'm saying. Like it could be Genty, it could be Hunter, it could be any of the 4 or 5 top people.
I think you got 5, maybe. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So
I tend to agree there. So.
All right, we cannot finish this podcast. I know we're getting towards the end without talking about the craziness that happened in the Oklahoma-Missouri game. If anybody goes and watches
what?
Go back and watch the last 5 minutes
nuts.
of this game. If you're going to watch anything this past weekend, what happened?
That was
that
insanity.
Game?
That peak college football.
Oh my goodness! 4 touchdowns in the last 3 minutes, 3.5, I guess. I mean,
yeah. After neither one of them scored anything the whole game.
Yeah, after a terrible whole game. And then you think Oklahoma's got this game. Missouri comes back. Oklahoma takes the lead. Then Missouri comes back and ties it up. Then
a fumble return for the touchdown.
And then Jackson Arnold drops the ball. I mean, all of a sudden, what? I mean, craziness. I mean, that is peak college football. That's why you still play the game. People care about it. What a great finish. I mean, my heart breaks for Oklahoma.
Tom Fornelli said this. Oklahoma and Missouri showed their underneath Big 12 identities in that game because that was a Big 12 game. It was 10-9 going into the fourth quarter, and it was 30-23 at the end of the
game. Yeah, that is absolutely 100% correct. So we're not done with the season yet, but we're starting to get a feel for some of these coaches. We're not going to have a lot of coach firings this year, it feels like, but I think going into 25, man, we're going to have some coaches on the hot seat. I mean, we could have Venables, Lees. I mean, those are just 3 names that jump off the table. Not to mention Napier. Think of the jobs that could open in 25.
Yeah, it's looking like that. And you assume that there's not going to be a lot of coaches thing this year. But what if somebody, it really comes down to, does a rich guy cut a check for some of these places?
I don't.
And what if a big guy makes a move, then it's a domino effect, and you never know what's going to happen.
It just
But
doesn't feel like.
You're right. It doesn't look like it, but I don't know.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, I mean, Reed, you were correct. You called it in the chat. You were like, I can feel it. Something in the air. The Who's got the W over Pitt. We talked about that earlier, man.
Yeah, that was a nice win for the
That was a
Hoos.
great win for Virginia.
Yeah.
Definitely not getting fired. No. Yeah. You know, the one person who we said was sort of on the hot seat or had pressure, who's not entirely safe yet, is Ryan Day. If he loses to Oregon, scenario, you lose to Indiana, don't make the title game, or you lose to Oregon and then you lose in the playoff.
Maybe.
They're going to be pissed after all the money they spent. And it's not necessarily like a knee-jerk, you lost this unacceptable game that you can never lose reaction, but it's more of a, we spent an obscene amount of money to build this Ohio State super team, and you didn't get the results with it, and so we got to go find someone else that does. Yeah. Yes, we're gonna do the preview Wednesday night. SMU alive for the ACC title game.
They are.
Race, absolutely, kind of in sitting position. SMU could make the playoff, which would be. Yeah, I know. I don't know who that was, but
Yeah. So.
yeah. So.
All right.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah. You never know. That's when you say that. That's when they happen. You know.
Exactly.
You never know.
Run down on Wednesday. Yes.
Okay, bro. Yeah. Well, we'll see if we can squeeze that in. All right.
All right.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Follow on Instagram and Twitter. And thank you so much for watching. Good night.
Now.